Good afternoon, everyone. I'll just give everyone a minute to jump on before we get started. We'll just give it a second. I hope everyone is able to see the stream. Perfect. Give it a second. I hope everyone is able to see the stream. The joys of using Google Hangouts seems to be how we get started. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Plan Hybrid Meetings 5 W's of Hybrid Meetings webinar. I truly appreciate you joining me on your lunch hour. I know in the event world, we're always busy. I know we just got off another meeting and another call. So I appreciate you taking the time to join me today to learn a little bit more about hybrid meetings and how we can use it to enhance our current bottom lines or increase the value of our events that we're already doing. I will go ahead and begin sharing my slides with all of you, and we'll jump right in. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please do not hesitate to put it in the chat box, and I'll do my best to get back to those questions throughout the presentation or at the end. Okay, welcome everyone again. So today's session is called 5 W's of Hybrid Meetings. We're going to look at the who, what, when, where, and why of hybrid meetings and what we can do to get started. I'm Mahogany Jones of Event Specialist, and I'm also the founder of planhybridmeetings.com. Planhybridmeetings.com is a collaborative platform created to educate meeting planners on how to successfully engage attendees online and in person. If you're tweeting about the session, please do not hesitate to use the PlanHybrid hashtag and share along with your followers. For those of you who are new to me, I'm Mahogany Jones, owner of Event Specialist, and I've been planning events since about 2004, and through trial and error and request of my clients, began planning hybrid meetings to increase the reach and the extension of the events they were already producing. Today's objectives, we're going to cover and understand the definition of a hybrid meeting, understand when you should be producing a hybrid meeting, learn who is your hybrid meeting dream team, understand the requirements that go into producing a hybrid meeting, and also how to communicate from a participant's perspective. If you want to go ahead and put in the chat, how many of you have actually planned hybrid meetings or are producing hybrid meetings? I know some of you online have been producing hybrid meetings. It's very good. Okay. So what is a hybrid meeting? A lot of times there's a lot of confusion with the actual terminology being used, and we often confuse hybrid meeting with a virtual meeting, which is attending 100% online, or attending a webinar, which is the series that we're attending right now. So a webinar, which is a learning format of just slides and audio, or just slides as you're seeing right now. In its purest form, a hybrid meeting is the marriage of a live in-person event and a virtual audience. There are 3 types of hybrid events that we can produce. We have those that connect a remote office location to a main event. We also have those that include remote speakers, and then those that can include connecting multiple sites to a broadcast studio. We have a hybrid event that we're actually producing for CanSPEP on July 11th, where we're bringing in 3 different locations and an online audience. So in another definition, a lot of times you hear that a hybrid event is what we call a virtual event that is an extension of an in-person meeting. And personally, I think that's more just because meeting planners, we like to have extra words in our details when we're producing our events or when we're coming up with titles. We won't go too technical into today's into the requirements of producing a hybrid meeting, but we're going to talk about what it is, what it involves, and how we can do that. So why now? The idea of hybrid events isn't new. There's a lot of myths and misconceptions when it comes to hybrid meetings. A lot of the main concerns being cannibalization and budget. According to MPI, data suggests that face-to-face attendance increases or remains the same when other audiences join in, as most delegates still prefer to attend events in person. This stat also rings true for PCMA, who is continuing to see an increase in in-person attendance after online attendees want to join in the fun. That element of fear of missing out is something not to be misunderstood. How many of you have attended the PCMA Convening Leaders event? I know a few of you have actually attended the PCMA events. Do you feel that you received less of a value by attending online versus in person? I know for myself, I truly enjoyed attending online and didn't feel like I was missing out because I was able to get full value and even create like a camaraderie almost of other participants who were online. It's almost like you build your own community in the online audience while still maintaining that connection to the in-person audience. Now, there are many reasons that we could add a virtual audience, but really, who is it all for? So the different reasons that you may want to consider hybrid options would be for audience expansion. There's national associations who have a mandate to reach their members from coast to coast. What about limited travel budgets? It's a way for people who aren't able to attend in person to still get value from that meeting. It's also a chance to enhance the experience by offering on-demand sessions, which also in turn creates new revenue streams. It also is a great way to add value to physical sponsors by allowing digital exposure. We're living in a digital era where we're constantly being told to adopt new technologies. But I want to warn, it's not for every situation. Technology is getting better, but we still need a very important element, and that element is the human interaction. That is definitely changing, but we need to be mindful of it when we're producing hybrid events. However, my very first hybrid meeting was produced for a reserved group of lawyers. This group rarely asked any questions in person, to the point that the conference chairs actually removed the floor mics from the event, knowing that nobody would actually step up to them to ask their questions. But this group was convinced that they wanted to extend their meeting online to allow for other people a chance to see the content that was being presented. I'd like to point out it was a 6-hour continuous video stream that went to the online audience. And true to the same way the attendees were in person, they actually did not chat to each other online or even ask questions. The only comments that we actually received were comments from the online attendees directly to us as the producers, stating how much they were enjoying the content and how much they appreciated the presentations being made available online. I mean, that shows a true testament to knowing your audience and understanding when is a good time to go hybrid or not. So who are your team players when it comes to producing a hybrid event? Well, we have our meeting management team. I like to recommend, if at all possible, one person or someone to manage the in-person side of the event, and then also someone to manage the online portion of the event. Then we need to be in sync and in constant communication, but having somebody to champion each side of the equation also helps for things not to get lost. Other members of your team also include your AV providers. I feel like they're often forgotten or at least misunderstood when it comes to producing an event. I honestly believe that we should leverage our AV providers and make sure that we are bringing them in early so that we can make use of the technology and also make sure that we're putting our best foot forward online. We also have our platform providers. Today, this presentation is being presented on a free platform on Google Hangouts to give you a perspective. But then we also have platforms that are fully managed by a team of technicians and experts from the other end. We also have our speakers who are part of the team, and then the virtual MC, which we'll get to a little bit later, but a virtual MC adds a great level of detail to the event and the online attendees. I'm a firm believer that every event is an opportunity to create a positive buzz about your brand or organization. It's an opportunity to showcase what you do well. This could be internally or externally. But in this era of technology, we need to remember what is the ROE? What is your return on experience? What is in it for the attendees? I believe that when you should go hybrid is when you are ready to enhance what you are already doing well. It is also a good time to go when your team is ready or beefed up enough. I know us as event planners, a lot of times we just say, yes, we'll take on that one more thing. We want to do a hybrid event? Absolutely, without even questioning it. Or we simply do that route because our clients have asked for it. As business owners, hybrid events have opened more ways to add value to our clients and also to the attendees by adding an additional revenue stream. But choosing a hybrid event is not for everyone. You have to ensure that you are producing an event that is in line with your event and or your business objectives. Where to produce these meetings? There's a lot of considerations that we can take into account when it comes to producing a hybrid event. Venue considerations are often dependent on the infrastructure of the in-person location. How many of you know the upload or download speeds of your venues that you're going to in the next, let's say, next 6 months? I know it's a question that I always ask because we don't have to know the answer to the upload or download speeds. I find it's very good to know it's a great chance to have it's a great chance to ask your venue sort of what they can showcase and what they can do. And another important point to remember when we're looking at different infrastructures, we have some of these older buildings and a lot of these event venues that have a lot of cement walls, or they're not properly wired to run the technology. But when in doubt, I like to ask our AV partners or your technology provider. Another thing that's important to remember is the online audience. It is very important to remember the lighting for your in-person audience so that they can see online. One of the biggest complaints that we see from an online audience perspective is that the room was not lit well enough to be able to see the speakers or what was being presented. So why? Why would you go hybrid? As meeting planners, we are often tasked with producing hybrid meetings because we are told to explore the opportunities. Perhaps it's a board member who came across a case study where a well-known Canadian medical conference was able to increase their revenue by 50% by offering a hybrid model. Sometimes it's simply the fear of missing out and that we just don't want to miss out on what the other people are doing. Or we're trying to keep up with our competitors. It's also budget cuts. How do you increase the value of your event, knowing that not all participants can attend due to budget cuts? And again, if it's a senior management or board direction, then we as planners have to oblige and go for it. So how do you plan a hybrid event? Well, step one, we start with our objectives. I know I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but it all begins with your objectives. Just as you set your objectives and your goals for your in-person meeting, the same is true for a hybrid meeting. What is the goal of your event? Are you a national association looking to expand your reach to members who could not otherwise attend? Are you offering continuing education units or CEUs? Are you looking to add an additional revenue stream? Identifying your goals and objectives will make sure that you are on your way to producing an effective hybrid event. Step 2, look at what you are already doing well and decide on what you would like to make available to the virtual audience. Especially if this is your first hybrid event, you don't want to jump into producing 3 days of content with multiple breakout rooms. I'm not saying it's not possible, but I like to recommend with starting small and start with what you are already doing well. Are you streaming the entire conference, general sessions, and educational workshops? Is your conference well known for the high-end or keynote speakers that you're bringing in? Stream the keynote speakers to drum up that interest. If you have a powerhouse keynote that will bring people to the in-person attendance, it will also add value to your online audience. Step 3, working with your teams, you want to adapt the agenda to suit both audiences. Agenda considerations include the timing of your event. So what are the time zones your attendees are tuning in from? Are there breaks that you have in person? One of the most important things when dealing with a hybrid event is to itemize your in-person script and your online script. Event producers are fantastic at making sure that we keep everything together, that we're itemized for what's going to go on screen, when the speakers are going to be announced, and the true flow of the event. A coffee break is also a great in-person networking opportunity, but it can also be used for the same benefit online. But you never want your screen to go black for the online audience or even to show that background noise. So this is where the event MC comes into play. They are a great person to have available to make sure the conversations continue to go online and that the momentum doesn't stop. It's also an opportunity that could be used to showcase sponsor videos. Number 4, define the presentation format. Will your speakers be using PowerPoint presentations? Will there be videos? Are they using Prezi? Your show producer and tech team need to know all variables that could impact the quality of the feed to the virtual audience, as well as the in-person audience. We've had speakers who are great in person, but get camera shy when they realize other people are watching online, which leads to my next point. Speaker training. It is important to let your speakers know from the very beginning that they will be presenting to both a live and virtual audience. I've had speakers who actually asked for a different contract and even an increase in pay when they realized the presentations were going to be available online and also after the conference had ended. You want to give your speakers as much information about the event as possible. How many people are you expecting in person and online? Give them a script that includes them welcoming both audiences. You want to prompt them to remind them to stay within the broadcast zone, especially if they like to wander. I also like to prep the speakers so that they understand what they're walking into. I had an experience once where one of our moderators was expecting to walk into an event that looked like an Oprah set. Although it was very interactive, we were not producing a TV show at that time. You want to schedule a walkthrough with your speakers to be familiar with where the questions will be going in and where they'll be coming from. Knowledge is power, and you want your speakers to feel as comfortable as possible. Next, we want to understand the technology. Meeting planners tend to have a lot of knowledge when it comes to AV setups and different technology requirements, but we don't have to be experts in the technology used to produce the hybrid meeting. But we do need to know who to defer our questions to and which questions to ask. I often recommend doing a test run, even for the whole team, even if you are not responsible for the online portion of the event, to let them get an idea of how things are going to happen and what things will look like from an attendee's perspective. It gives them a chance to feel like they're involved on both sides and at least have a top-down view of what's happening. We also have to understand that there is most likely to be about a 4 to 7 second delay depending on the video conferencing platform or streaming platform that you are using for your hybrid event. Today on the Google Hangout, as you can see, every once in a while you feel like you're going into a bit of a vortex situation where the slides move in and out a little bit outside of our control, but that's again part of choosing your platform that suits your specific needs. And don't be afraid of it. You just want to know that you have the right people on your team. And if you don't feel like you have the right people on your team, I know meeting planners, and in our world, we have so many friends in the industry that we can reach out to them and use them as a resource. There's no hesitation, and even from myself, to contact other planners and say, hey, have you come across this situation before? Or I'm looking to produce a hybrid event. Do you mind doing a bit of a brainstorming session with me? Most planners are very open to doing those types of information sharing. Another person that we often underestimate are the AV providers. A lot of the account executives or even some of the directors have a lot of knowledge in producing hybrid meetings, but because they're always on one side, we automatically assume they're the person to go to for technology. But a lot of times they have great ideas when it comes to how you can produce the event, how you can put the show together, and things like that. Another great resource that we tend to underestimate are show producers. There's a lot of event producers out there who have a better understanding of producing a show from start to finish, whether that be an award ceremony or whether that be an annual dinner with a keynote speaker, or even something even more as elaborate as a bit more of a 5 keynote presentation or a TEDx style event. Make use of the knowledge and the information that we have available in the industry. Number 7, mitigate risk. Once you review the technology, sometimes you find out that the situation is not ideal for streaming. Event planner tip number 726, we have to be flexible. For example, if you want to bring in a remote speaker, or you have a speaker in multiple locations but you're not sure about their internet connection, there are options like having a pre-recorded video that you stream live from the event location. Now you are only relying on your tech provider and not the flaky internet connection of a remote speaker. And it also gives you peace of mind of knowing that the full presentation will stream seamlessly without any of the technology interruptions. Number 8, assemble your on-site dream team. Again, in an ideal world, every live event has a team member assigned to each meeting function, from registration to audio-visual to food and beverage monitoring. The same should apply to your virtual event. An additional member to your virtual event team would be a virtual MC. As we mentioned before, they're a great way to ensure that everyone stays connected. Leveraging the in-person location, your online MC is able to see in real time what both sites are experiencing. If the feeds cut out, they're able to jump into the chat and keep the online attendees updated with what's going on. That person is also able to let audiences know when there are delays and agenda changes. Determine your online audience price. If you charge a fee for your conference or annual meeting, determine how the online presentations will be priced in compared to the in-person audience. There are many schools of thought that online education should be free or online conferences should be free, but only you can decide what works for your budget. I have seen it work well where the online registrations are covered by sponsorship, and that a sponsor has completely covered the cost of production as well as the cost of the attendees, so that the attendees absorb none of that for cost. I have also seen medical conferences who charge the exact same price for the online content based on the number of credits the physicians are able to receive. There are different models to consider, and we'd be happy to chat later if you would like. But just keep in mind that it has to work with your objectives and with your own end goals in mind. Step 10, data, data, data. We want to make sure that both your in-person and online audiences are surveyed. You want to make sure that you're asking questions to understand if they're gaining value from the event. Did they enjoy the in-person audience? What else, in-person event? What else would they like to see? For the online audience, you want to understand the reports that you're getting and that you're able to generate from your platform. Did your attendees enjoy attending? How long did they watch the stream for? Did they feel they were able to ask questions? And how likely are they to attend the in-person meeting next year? You want to be sure that when you are producing a hybrid event, that you're not doing it just for the sake of doing it, and that you are actually adding value. And if that value is an added dollar value, then make sure that you're verifying your numbers and that the registration targets have met your needs. But data seems to be king these days, so we want to be sure that we are on top of it and that we're measuring our return on objectives and also the return on the experience. So there are many resources in the hybrid meeting space. We have planhybridmeetings.com, which is actually a passion project of mine that I began last year after having conversations with different people in the industry who felt that we could use a little bit more education and opportunities to discuss hybrid meetings. There's also the Virtual Edge Institute, where they offer the Digital Event Strategist certification, but they also have other resources available for us as meeting planners. So there's a lot of up-to-date case studies and different things that you can look at through the Virtual Edge Institute if you're looking for some more information. There's also MPI Hybrid Meeting Solutions, who offer some research and some data on how to produce a hybrid meeting. And then there's also our AV suppliers, who tend to do a lot of case studies as well, and white papers and a few step-by-step guides and things like that to help us produce hybrid meetings. So before we go to the questions, I know the Hangout was doing a little bit of a few weird things, so we just want to make sure that we get all of the information covered before I stop sharing my screen. So our next session that we do have, we will be diving in a little deeper into actually how you put your foundation together to produce a hybrid meeting. So what are the actual steps that you take to produce the meeting? Going deeper into these 10 that we presented today, we'll kind of show you what an actual production schedule could look like. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this screen and then go ahead and check the questions. All right, I'll just give it a second so I can see the questions over in the chat box. I completely agree. A lot of times when we do attend the hybrid event, we tend to want to go in person just so that we can meet up with the people, like Sense of Marketing was saying. You want to meet the people that you chatted with online. You want to see, you know, the people that you were talking to. So we have Martin, who does multi-city meetings. How do you find the attendance at those? Do you find that it increases or that it doesn't? That's a great question, Diane. Suggestions on how to help clients overcome the fear that adding hybrid will affect the in-person audience. To be completely frank, the stats that for most hybrid meetings, they always show an actual increase. If you look at any of the MPI research that's been put out, or even the PCMA education research that's been put out, statistics always show an increase in in-person attendance, purely based on either the fear of missing out or the unexpected factors that go into a hybrid meeting. Another great point for the hybrid option is things like the unexpected audience. So for example, you have a physician conference that's being streamed live, and the content that's being covered, you didn't expect other people to join in. For example, it's a health conference, and you're discussing even something as controversial as the assisted suicide as it stands. What we actually seen from one of our conferences was that a lot of lawyers actually logged in and registered to attend online, which created a whole other revenue stream that we weren't actually anticipating. So when you're presenting sort of your argument to your clients to overcome that fear, you want to kind of use both case studies in language that that they understand, but also you want to arm yourself with as much information as you can. I know for myself, what I did was completely create like a step-by-step plan that would kind of alleviate some of their stress. It became a report, and it became a step-by-step, so that the fear of producing a hybrid event wasn't something that was completely out there in thinking, but something that was a little bit manageable in a step-by-step plan. Sometimes too, and I've actually had this happen with a client, they actually just didn't understand the terminology, and they thought they had to be experts in the technology, but also experts in a virtual meeting. So sometimes understanding sort of the language and how to position it is a great way to help. I hope that answered your question, Diane. And time differences. Time differences are a little tricky. It depends on what your content length is and also what your end goals are. We have seen conferences that are scheduled to go coast to coast online, and what we have done is do a delayed start time across the board. So for example, if we're starting in the Eastern time zone, we delay the start time by about 3 hours in the Pacific time zone, and that they also start at 9 a.m. their time, but we're already 3 hours into our content. So it's kind of like they're watching the replay as it's happening. Also, if it's in the middle of the day, like 12 o'clock, things like that, people tend to understand a difference in time zones. If you have shorter time zones and that you're running something from maybe 12 until 2, then it's perfectly fine. Okay, so let's see. So some are enablers of 2-hour advisory board meetings with 12-hour time difference. We saw one meeting tenfold. From 14 jump to 150 by doing 5 instead of 1 city. That's a great way to look at it too. There's also in time stamping, if you wanted to start your event or run a daily event based on the individual time zones, you can always record your content once and do something like a simulive where we would have pre-recorded content that is streamed to each team, streaming by one instead of one. So what you could do is pre-record almost your content and then have your speakers or your executive available to answer questions in the chat while you're simply watching the video of a pre-recorded session. Not only will it give you a chance to kind of mitigate the risk and make sure it's happened, but you can also ensure the consistency of what is being delivered to each of these meetings instead of having to tax your executives, your speakers in doing something 5 times. But that's also another approach you could take. That seems to be a great return that you've seen, Martin. Any other questions? Rachel or Diane, you may have to jump on another Plan Hybrid session and teach us a little bit more. So future webinars, how to integrate your online audience with your live audience. We do actually have a technology and engagement session coming up in August that is going to address just that. How do you keep both audiences engaged without losing kind of your credibility for each audience? And also, what are the new techniques to bring it together and some of the ways to make it a little easier? I know with a lot of the different app integrations, we're able to do things like live polling that happens immediate for both the in-person and online audience. one app that both the online and in-person audience can log into to kind of chat with each other so that they all feel like they're part of the same experience. We'll dive into that a little bit more in August. We do actually have a technology and engagement session recording that is available on the planhybridmeetings.com website right now if you wanted to have a look. There also is a session on sponsorship and some innovative ways to bring sponsorship around your event. The next session that we do have coming up, like I said, is the 10 steps, and is really the how. And the co-presenter is actually Elisa Hurley from FMAV, who brings an exceptional viewpoint from a engagement perspective. So we will be talking a little bit about that on the 22nd. How does the future look? Will multi-cities take over? I can honestly say it seems to be picking up not hand over fist. I know we had a meeting yesterday and we're working on an event that's 3 cities, and our provider actually said that out of nowhere they're producing I believe it's 5 actual multi-city events for the month of June, which they've never seen in their business. But because of the budget cuts and people realizing that video conferencing is making things happen, we also have platforms like Blab that's really pushing people to understand the technology that's out there. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Blab, Blab is like a Google Hangout, kind of like what we're on today, but a Google Hangout that has 4 windows so that you can invite somebody else from the audience to join in via webcam. You can't always guarantee their connection, but you're showing others that the technology can actually work for you and work with you. So I can see us being able to leverage a lot of that. Another thing that I'm seeing happening for the future is control over our content. So I'm seeing a lot of legal and legalese having to come into our speaker contracts, because we have to put stipulations that if you are streaming this content via Facebook Live, Periscope, Anchor, or any of these online platforms, that we still retain copyright and control of that content. So that is where I'm seeing it come a little bit more into play. And also Google Hangout and Facebook Live, you're starting to see them pull people's streams, and you have to actually validate that your content is in fact yours, that you're presenting via all of these live streaming apps that are essentially free and are enablers for us to do our job and to add some excitement, I guess, to the events we're producing. But we just have to be a little mindful on what's happening. Multi-cities are definitely picking up. Elisa is great. Any other questions for today? I appreciate all of the questions and the input. Perfect. Well, if those are all of the questions we have, I want to thank you again for joining me. And if you want to visit the planhybridmeetings.com website, you can go ahead and you can register for our updates, and we'll let you know when other events are happening and other webinars. So we do have the next webinar, like I said, June 22nd with Elisa. And then we do have a few more planned to roll out before August of this year. And if you have any session ideas, don't hesitate to include it in the survey that you will be receiving after this event. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great day.